As this year finally draws to a close, let's take a look at some of the craziest discoveries of 2020. An untouched food shop was recently uncovered in the ruins of Pompeii. Traces of pork, fish, beef, and snails were even found in some of the containers. Last March, the Pentagon confirmed that UFOs are real, and nobody seemed to care. A new geoglyph of a cat was discovered in the Nazca Desert, and it appears to be the oldest one in the region. The 2,000-year-old artwork was overlooked for so long because the lines were badly faded over the years. An ancient Roman mosaic floor was discovered under a vineyard in northern Italy after decades of searching for it. And finally, a massive canvas of tens of thousands of Ice Age drawings of extinct animals was found in the Amazon rainforest. The find shows how little we know about the Amazon, and that there are still many great discoveries to be made. Morbidly Wholesome, Part 3. In 1935, North Carolina, a pregnant Alton Jordan fell into a well and gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Frank. The infant remained underwater for 45 minutes without breathing until both were safely rescued. A Pakistani serial killer was sentenced to be strangled in front of the victims' families, dismembered in 100 pieces, and then burned in acid. The same way he killed over 100 teenage boys. Olympic runner Betty Robinson was involved in a plane crash in 1931 and was wrongfully declared dead upon first being discovered. She spent 7 months in a coma, and it took her 2 years to learn how to walk again. But in 1936, she rejoined the U.S. Olympic relay team and took home the gold medal. Morbidly Wholesome, Part 2. Floyd and Violet Hartwig were married for 67 years and died while holding hands. They met in elementary school and exchanged over 100 love letters while Floyd served in World War II. In 2015, their hospice beds were pushed together so that they could spend their final moments holding hands. When Floyd passed away, Violet followed him just 5 hours later. A grieving father had this tombstone designed for his wheelchair-bound son to depict him as free from his earthly burdens. In 1959, police were called into a segregated library in South Carolina because a 9-year-old black boy refused to leave. He later got a PhD in physics from MIT but died in 1986 as one of the astronauts on the Challenger. And the library that once refused to lend him books is now named after him. Morbidly Wholesome, Part 1. In 2012, a Texas father beat his 5-year-old daughter's molester to death. But a grand jury declined to indict the man because they decided that he was justified in using deadly force to protect his daughter. A man who suffered a stroke in 2004 permanently lost the ability to feel sad. A Greek war veteran was once diagnosed with cancer in his mid-60s and was only given 9 months to live. But he went back to those same doctors 25 years later to tell them that he was alive and well. But he soon found out that all of the doctors who diagnosed him were now dead. The man ended up living to the age of 102. Morbid Facts, Part 111. This is a photo of Anne Frank's father Otto revisiting the attic where they hid from the Nazis. Sadly, he was the only surviving member of the family as his 2 daughters died just weeks before their camp was liberated. In 1783, a boy was born with 2 heads, but one of the heads was upside down. Surprisingly, the other head was somewhat functional, and the boy even claimed that he could hear the other brain talking to him. Tigers are some of the most vengeful animals on the planet and will take revenge on anyone who has wronged them. In 1997, a Russian poacher shot a tiger and left him for dead before stealing part of his meal. The tiger later found the poacher's cabin and waited 12 hours for him to arrive before killing and eating him. Morbid Facts, Part 110. In the 1920s, not much was known about the effects of radium. So when a group of women were paid to use glow-in-the-dark radioactive paint, they were told that it was completely harmless. But after years of licking the tips of their paintbrushes while using this radium-based paint, the devastating effects eventually became obvious. Many of these women developed a condition known as radium jaw, which caused horrible tumors around the mouth, and some of their jaws would literally fall off. The ancient Romans would often substitute criminals into plays for punishment. So if a character died in the story, a real criminal would die on stage. The ancient Aztecs built swords out of obsidian, which is said to be 50 times sharper than surgical steel. These swords were apparently sharp enough to decapitate not only a human with one strike, but also a horse. Morbid Facts Christmas Special. In 2018, a 66-year-old Canadian man was arrested for murdering 8 people over a 7-year span. During that time, he worked as a mall Santa in Toronto. In 1932 Arizona, a man dressed as Santa Claus jumped out of a plane to parachute into a Christmas parade. Sadly, his parachute failed to open and hundreds of parents had to cover their kids' eyes as Santa plummeted to his death. This is a photo of a man dressed as Santa Claus visiting dying workplace children in a hospital ward in 1906. In December of 1959, a man from Los Angeles murdered his wife with a hammer before taking his own life, all while his 3 kids watched in horror. For the next 50 years, the house went completely untouched, as all of the Christmas decorations were still visible from the windows.